Yes, and welcome back to another episode of Top Tier Career, The American Dream. I'm with a good friend of mine and business, I guess you can say we have some association, although we run different companies. So, good friend of mine, Damon Bishop. So, Damon, I'm going to let you go and introduce yourself, and then we'll get right into some of our questions. And we're going to play a little catch-up on this video, too. So, for anybody that's like wondering what we're talking about, we're going to make it as relative and relevant as possible. But we also haven't been able to catch up lately because we're both so damn busy. So, all right, Damon, take it away, brother. But introduce yourself. Let's hear who this great person is.
I appreciate that. Yeah, Chad. My name's Damon Bishop. So I met Chad, let's see, probably about 3 to 4 years ago or so, and for a big box gym chain that we worked together at, and through a really great mutual friend that we have. So yeah, as far as myself goes, I've been in the fitness business for just around 13 years, pretty much right out of high school. Started at the desk, worked my way up, the whole story, management, yada, yada. But a lot of really great, ebbs and flows within that story, a lot of peaks and valleys, but a lot of growth, a lot of opportunity, and great relationships I was able to forge over those years. And since then, I've been able to carry that over into my own businesses, as well as doing real estate. So just like to keep my hands full and keep myself in every area I can. I just love being busy and productive. So this has been a really good opportunity, too, to be able to connect with you again, and I really appreciate you inviting me on your show.
Fantastic. Damon, and thank you for all of that, by the way. One is just tell us a little bit about the story and all of that, and then, because it's, Damon and I have worked in different capacities. He was my boss at the big box gym for a period of time. They just moved positions around a lot there, and I got to tell you, of what we were talking about earlier is when you're an entrepreneur and you work inside of a corporate structure, it is often very hard to manage an entrepreneur. And then again, it is so incredibly easy to manage an entrepreneur, but it's all in the competency of the manager. And of the management that I worked with at this particular large box gym, it's a medium-sized box gym, but at least it used to be. It's failing like crazy now. I've only had really two amazing superiors, direct line of bosses, and those two, one is on right now. Actually, no, I take it back because Johnny's in that too. So I have 3 total that I can think of that ever were like the people that I never actually, like, my entrepreneurial spirit lined up so well with them. I was the easiest person to manage, and except for when the company itself was making bad decisions, but it wasn't a reflection on my direct management like with Damon. Wasn't that. So just so that people have a better idea, if you're working in a job and you've always kind of wanted to be an entrepreneur and you find yourself looking critically at the decisions of the company or your managers, you might actually be a legit entrepreneur. Some people don't realize it until a different stage of their life, often later on, or it could show up later on and go, oh, wow, I'm an entrepreneur. There's qualifying values of how to figure out if you actually are, and some of that is exactly what I'm saying. It's not about just bitching for the sake of bitching. It is I have this is the problem, and this is the solution, and being able to communicate that is the next step afterwards. So some people can always see a problem, but all they could ever do is bitch. Then there's people that are the real entrepreneurs, are the ones that they see a problem, they may complain, they may sound like they're bitching, but they're trying to come up with a solution to make it flow so much better. So Damon was always that ideal boss to me. So because he's competent and his competence was high. There's only 3 people that I could actually give that to that I worked for at that company, and I worked for that company from 2014 until I left them for a year and I came back. So that was an interesting experience that I had. It was about 5 years worth of time with them, and only 3. But they moved bosses around all the time. It's just management they were constantly cycling people, changing structures and things like that. So, but you do get that with earlier young businesses, and I hope that everyone who watches this gets to experience that challenge but come out with a better outcome than the one that we're talking about now. I don't foresee the one we're talking about now actually making it. I think they're going to sell it, and maybe they'll restructure under somebody else, completely different new ownership. But we'll find out. Right, we'll see.
Right.
So, but anyway, so now that we've got a little bit of our backstory out of the way, Damon is absolutely that. He is one of the most definable entrepreneurs, right? He stands in that definition so well. So, and it's one of the reasons why I asked him on here, because he's got a great story to tell, and just listening to the way the mechanics of his mind works will give you more insight to, you don't need to be this incredibly gifted human being that's like born Elon Musk to be a great entrepreneur. It's the extra to the ordinary. And Damon's willing to get up real early on a Saturday and record with me, at 6 a.m., and he works as a realtor, and he does his business, and he's raising a family, so all of this happening. And look, the man's smiling. He's ready to go. He's got a great outfitted situation over there for a business. So it's, now that I've given my piece of his introduction, what I want to do is just go ahead right into what we're doing. And we can talk about both, because you being a realtor is also an entrepreneur position. I spoke with Johnny about this, and I said, Johnny, name me one profession that has an equal amount of entrepreneurs in it or more. And he goes, real estate. Because I was talking about personal training. I'm like, look, you got almost every personal trainer is an entrepreneur. Well, yes and no, but then also you get the realtors, and it's a yes and no, but the dominance of entrepreneurs is incredibly high. Now, you do have the solopreneurs, which are the people that try to do everything, and then the entrepreneur knows how to structure it, so they're not the only one doing everything. Although they may be doing most of it for their company, they know how to develop relationships that help not only lessen the burden, but to increase the productivity. So how to create those kind of relationships. Solopreneurs typically just do whatever, and they're just on their own all the time. They have the highest fail rate, although they still all fall into the category of entrepreneur, because very few people have ever heard solopreneur. All right, so Damon, your company we're talking about today, again, we can talk about both. It's completely up to you. But the one that we specifically talked about having is it's Hypertrophy Lab, LLC.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about Hypertrophy Lab, LLC. You're the owner. And tell me about the company, and then we'll get you your servicing. How you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is going to be, I think this will be good too, because from your previous guest, I know that there have been some that are 1,000% all in, and that's their main way of living and the way that they generate revenue in their lives. For me, Hypertrophy Lab is a little bit, well, to be honest, it started a little bit more as a passive part-time venture. Basically there was some larger scale changes that had happened at the previous company that you had mentioned, which kind of allowed me the opportunity to use my entrepreneurial mind in that sense and branch out and do something different. Managing all those years was incredibly fun. Being a leader in that position, being able to help drive and kind of just inspire others to perform and achieve company goals was always fun at that time. But once you start to realize that there is a life outside of just the box that you work at, you start to understand that there's ways to really branch out and step out and help people. So really it started passively. I started with fitness blogging, just kind of writing some articles, and that was a big hit. I was able to get a lot of my current presence on social media to kind of get behind me, subscribe to that newsletter, and just kind of stay up to date on that. And simultaneous to that, I was just training personal training clients. Fast forward, I reached a point that I recognized a lot of what my previous employees had recognized way earlier. And that is that, this environment of a corporate setting is only going to really go so far, and it's really just this endless hamster wheel of inefficiency, because we've commoditized so much, and we've, gotten to such a level that we're no longer trying to be distinguishable. We're just trying to compete And when you're in that level of commoditizing, everyone just looks the same. All offers look the same. All gyms look the same. Everything just kind of blends together, and you don't really stand out. So I was fortunate because it was a lot of things all happening all at once that kind of presented this opportunity for me to take my audience and move that over to something a little bit more digital, which is easier to fulfill. But then it also gave me an opportunity to still offer some sort of a physical presence to those who wanted to seek it. So, yeah, as far as Hypertrophy Lab, it really just started with a blog and just posting consistently, gaining an audience, gaining attention, and then from there just converting that audience and attention into revenue, and doing that by way of providing packages, services, and value-packed content to really draw people in and hopefully get them to see the same value in working with me. So it's, I think some of the best ideas that come up are oftentimes unintended the way that they end up, or accidental in some cases. So I was blessed and fortunate to have been able to really capture the attention of people and kind of just start to spiral from there and gain momentum. So that's really the genesis of Hypertrophy Lab.
Yeah. You know, something just came to mind, by the way. I want to share this with you and then, you know, obviously our
Please.
audience.
Yeah.
So do you remember the TV show Heroes?
I do. Full disclosure, I'm not much of a television watcher. I have pretty severe ADHD, so my entertainment comes from gaming. But yeah, I do very much vividly remember Heroes, yes.
So there's one particular character in the show. No, and I watched multiple seasons early on, and then I departed from television a while ago, but it's like a very rare, or it's a minimal amount of my time that actually gets any kind of entertainment that would be agreed entertainment. Right. My entertainment's learning. I love learning. I love writing. I love producing something that changes and makes things better, you know, being that I am also the guy that'll pick up trash in the bathroom, no matter whose bathroom, where it is, you know, public or private, doesn't matter. Or trash when I see it. It's something I learned from my grandfather on my mom's side. And, you know, so with that being said, this particular person in this series, he was one that could adopt people's powers. So it was all about, like, all these different heroes had, just to give some people may never have seen the show. You can just look it up and you'll find plenty of episodes to watch and access to do it. But everybody had their own unique superpowers, right? Well, this one particular person could adopt other people's, and just by contact, he could make contact with them. Now he has their power. Wow. The reason why I'm bringing that up is like a unicorn entrepreneur, which is that the people that I've surrounded myself with are those types of entrepreneurs. They're more like the unicorn version. They're very rare because of the trait values that they have make them incredibly good at becoming business owners and making opportunities for other people. This person was taking everyone else's power, but in differing degrees. What my point is with the entrepreneur is, if you're that unicorn, or you can identify if you are kind of a unicorn entrepreneur, is by everybody that you've worked with, especially if you're in a corporate structure, you're learning not only something directly that they're saying, but you're learning their styles. You're learning everything about the scenario that you're in. Not just going, this is my job, this is what I need to execute, and then at the end of the day I get to go home, and then tomorrow I'll rinse, recycle, and repeat, right? That's not the way we work. We work with the direction of study. I want to study. I want to understand. I want to come up with solutions, but before I come up with a solution, I need to understand what the challenges are. And I need to understand what the mechanics are to dealing with the challenges that they've overcome and what they're currently dealing with, so I can try to come up with a way of creating new mechanisms to overcome the new challenges that come along, better preparing, right? So right. Damon is one of those people. You know, he is one that will learn from everything, as he said. You know, as we were going over there, is that he was learning as he was in the different roles and as that company restructured, and then what he was doing outside of it. It's incredibly impressive when you run across people like us. And I'm not saying me because you need to be impressed by me. It's the way that I think. You know, it's the way that I am. I'll come across incredibly humble because I know that I don't know everything, and I don't want to know everything. Well, I do actually, but I don't want to know everything to make other people not know stuff. You know, I don't want to be the right guy where everybody else is wrong, unless, you know, truly is something we need to move forward. I'm not going to be the one that follows the crowd, but I'm going to study and understand the crowd. So with that being said, Damon was in the environment, being that he was, you know, as district manager level and still training people, which, you know, a lot of times when people get to that level, they're like, I'm done with it, I'm not going back. Which I'd be one of those people, and just because I burnt out on personal training. That's why I teach trainers, and that's why I teach, you know, managers and business owners how to make incredibly good personal training departments, and or even gyms in themselves. But point is that Damon was studying. So if you're in that category where you realize you are better off being a solo business guy or an entrepreneur, take these things into consideration. If you feel like you lack a specific trait or skill, you have a couple of options, right? You can buy a book, read it, and comprehend it the best that you can and try to apply what you've learned and see how well you do at it. Trial and error is very high on that, or error is very high when you're doing trial on that. But you can still do it. It just may take you a lot of time. That's the cost of it. You could hire a mentor, which is also great, but that will come with a monetary cost. Time and then application, but you're going to offset the learning curve that the reading a book gives you. The mentor has done it and they know how to move you forward if you find a good quality mentor. Then you have, I can't afford the mentor and I'm not necessarily capable of applying everything in the book and then giving myself enough time to really, you know, kind of iron out everything to make it effective. So then you can take a job working someplace that requires those skills to make you better. Then your report card is on payday and whether or not you get promoted, right? How well the company sees you as an asset or if you're a liability. It's another way of learning it. Just take something, get into a job, and try to go the direction of your weaker skill and develop it into being proof positive, because the company's going to tell you if you're good or not by how well they pay you and if they promote you and how they show attention to you. Then you could go to college. You can go to college and learn a lot of stuff. There's entrepreneur classes and things like that. To me personally, I think that's not necessarily the most effective route because of you learn a lot of theory, then application is hard because you still need to be able to have the understanding of the real world in order to move it forward. So I would say that that's another reason why I consider Damon to be a unicorn in this. So as we continue on the interview, I want to make sure that people are holding a position like that so they can look at you in a dynamic way and learn from that dynamic of thinking. Than to just say, okay, he said this, therefore that. It's look for the mechanics that Damon uses. That's, again, one of the reasons why he's one of those people that is close to me in my circle. So,
if I could also, just to build on what you said, I think that was pretty profound. I think, especially if you're someone who's working in a corporate environment, I think we oftentimes find trouble, you know, seeking that like inspiration that we feel we need. And I think, like you said, if you have that entrepreneurial mind, I think naturally you're inclined to ask questions. And from an outsider's perspective, it could be viewed as, oh, he questions everything. But from a real insightful perspective, it's more that he asks questions about everything, right? Which I think are two completely different things. And I think that's what really separates that entrepreneurial spirit from people that are in that corporate environment. Your ability to, you know, question the status quo, to think out of the box, not afraid to ask, you know, this is a nice initiative, but why are we doing it this way? Why aren't we doing it this way instead? And that was always something that I really much appreciated in working with you, that dynamic that we had where, you know, I would deliver to you and the team, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. This is what the company initiative is. And, you know, a lot of times I would get the questions of, you know, why this? Why not this? And I always took that as, you know, again, that entrepreneurial mind, I always took that as insightful because, you know, leaders can learn from their employees. Employees, obviously, hopefully can look at their leaders for inspiration. But, you know, the books, the mentorship, I think there's a lot of hidden mentors just around you. For anyone listening, there's a lot of hidden mentors and people that are around you that you probably didn't really step back and think about, you know, as far as, wow, this person actually probably is a mentor. And I think even for someone that might be managing employees, I think that there's always mentors to be found, you know, that are within your charge, right? So just because your position says this doesn't mean you can't look at someone as a mentor, which, you know, our time together, Chad, I was able to look at you as a mentor as well. So I think just that constant absorption and willingness to learn from anybody, regardless of position, I think is really what can set someone up to be successful.
Absolutely. You know, there's categorical mentors and then there's trait value mentors. And a categorical mentor is somebody that positions himself to be that, right? I'm a mentor, and this is what I'm going to do, and I'll teach you this. Like a consultant, I'm a mentor, right? A professional mentor.
Yeah,
Okay? They hire me, and then I start putting things together to make them work. Then there's the trait mentors, and that could be anybody. You could have a brand new employee, somebody who's never worked a day in the industry, but they come with a preset amount of traits that you can draw from. And they may be able to make phone calls faster. They may be able to, organize things better. They may be able to communicate with other people very well. They just may have this different lens that they see the world through. And now you're able to pull something else. But you don't have to sit down and be like, the crazy person going, by the way, I like that trait about you, and I want you to mentor me in it. Now, you could if you know how to deliver that conversation. The drawback is that if you're in that corporate structure, sometimes that may make you look like you're either after their job or, it depends on how confident the person is that you're speaking with. If you're the boss over somebody like that or their direct supervisor, they may look at you as being inadequate and unable to manage them if you don't have the relationship built of understanding and the desire to do a good job, and that everybody understands the hierarchy and things like that. So it's in the delivery, but 100% on. Mentors are all over the place. It's just how do you see them? And if you see them as categorical, and that's the only ones you can get, then you have a big ticket value that you may have to actually pay a lot of money for them, or have to have some other resource exchange to get them there, or you observe them at a distance, but you're not getting enough interaction to realize the mechanisms and mechanics that they think by. You're just watching their actions and trying to determine on your own what all of the stuff means. So great insight, by the way, there, Damon. And again, this is what I mean by pay attention to the operating mechanics that Damon uses in the way he thinks. Very dynamic, and it's a holistic process of thinking. And I don't mean that in the granola warrior, crunchy, hippie kind of way. I mean that in the association of multiple different values that are all working together at one time, or in a very complex way, but yet still coming up with a very solid outcome. So trial and error brings up something, but the solid outcome comes through, a lot of values, abilities, traits, your past experience and your view of the future and things like that all kind of add up to it. I don't want to make this too esoteric or whatever, but at the same time, this is one of the challenges that Damon and I face, is because we don't get enough of these conversations external of this conversation, with our center group. So we get into it and it gets to be kind of, exciting and fun. Like, I want to show you what I got for Christmas, that kind of thing. So
right.
We play, so I'm trying to refrain from going too far into being overly complex here. David, do you have anything to say to that for the moment before we move on? Because we're going to lose track of time if I keep this up.
No, just to that point, I think this is what makes discussions with you so fun is I think I pull those things out of you, and I love to hear that insight from you. And again, I take advantage of the time, right? Right now, I'm not necessarily having to pay at all for this time, for your time. So I find that valuable. So to your point, we don't want to go too far and on these tangents, but I very much value that. And I'm sure the audience does as well. So
yeah, thank you. All right, let's move on. I want to go back in, but let's not do it. All right.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. So your company, so how do you service your clients? I get that that you train and service clients to living the way that they desire, but let's expand on that just a little bit and kind of like if you give some examples of how you created that for your clients. So first off, we'll go with what is it that you create? Just pick Jane or Joe, John or Jane, Doe, right? And then this is the avatar person, how you work with them, and then how you come to get to that point where you understand how to work with them specifically.
Yeah. So the question, what I create, basically what I create for everyone is programs that obviously allow them to achieve the better parts of what they want to achieve, and by way of hypertrophy, exercising, weightlifting, things like that, really centered around hypertrophy is most of our programs, given the name Hypertrophy Lab. But, in doing so, it's deeper than just sessions, working out, point A, point B. It's a little bit more also lifestyle centered too. I've noticed a gap in the industry that will probably continue to exist And that gap that I noticed, which I guess you could almost identify as a niche in a sense, would really just be that there's value components missing from the business of personal training. Personal training is oftentimes viewed as session start, session end, whereas there's so much more value to be provided to clients for them to understand lifestyle, habits, and to just be better people, right? Because, you know, this journey of fitness, especially for myself, you know, going through it, I didn't start exercising until 7 years in the business. So I was selling a product that I never used, which was the irony of it. So that's really where it changes. Once I realized, okay, there's an opportunity here to fill the market with lifestyle and habit forming things such as nutrition, understanding where to grocery shop, what to buy when you grocery shop, understanding sleep habits, understanding stress management, right? All of these components and things that oftentimes trainers only discuss during the session start and by the time the session ends. But, you know, there's so much more value to be given outside of that. And, you know, I was able to identify, you know, creating courses and things like that that my clients can also engage in. So, you know, they're not just getting the value of me being there with them in person, but they're also getting the value of the content I create, the articles that I write, the videos I record, and being able to consume that content on a consistent basis, therefore kind of making me that authoritative figure in their eyes, in their life, when it comes to fitness. So just really trying to be as present as I can without having to be present was the goal. And that's kind of where the idea for Hypertrophy Lab, you know, really started, and that's kind of what it's grown into at this point. And that's really what we provide, is just trying to provide a service beyond your normal training experience and really just trying to give them as much value as possible.
I love it. You know, what comes to mind about this too is this is something from your previous employment that you incubated through the process, right? So with the previous employment, where did you start? Was it entry level, and how did you progress? Because you got to the point of middle management. No, but where did you start at? As you said, 7 years, you didn't even exercise. You didn't use the product that you were promoting. No. So how did you start into the fitness industry with that company?
Yeah, so really, it was once I started actually exercising, I started to just kind of identify from there, you know, what was helping me be successful. I felt that in doing so and getting into fitness and getting into actually working out, you know, I was able to kind of just gauge what helped me. So, you know, buying a program online. Okay, great. Like, I can follow this point A to point B. I can learn what I need to do, have it all structured, laid out, perfect. That helped me also in selling personal training packages for that commercial gym that we worked for, and really excelled in my sales career after I started actually working out. And then from there, it was just, you know, where's the gaps? What are the things that I really need? And I was just consistently seeking information, Googling things, looking things up, trying to just find information. And, you know, some of us, we spend a lot of time maybe on YouTube. And, you know, on YouTube, you find pages and people, content creators to actually subscribe to. And the point of subscribing to them is you're consistently getting that drip, and you're in that feed, knowing when they're posting content. You see their library of content that they've posted, because a lot of that is evergreen. And you're just constantly digesting and soaking that in. I found myself buying programs from some of these content creators as well, and trying to learn from them and just trying to absorb as much as possible. And that's when I saw, oh, this is like a legitimate business opportunity, where if you can just provide value to an audience, albeit free, you know, there's something to be said there where you can also offer paid content that will allow you to tap into a broader market as well. So really, it's just, I guess it just really started all just from actually exercising, actually using, you know, what I would preach about for 7 years, and then just trying to expand upon that and try to fill in, you know, where would I want this gap to be filled? You know, what would I expect if I was someone that was buying these packages? And I think it was good too. Working this commercial gym also helped me see that gap, right? Because it was just constantly trying to find new business and new leads and just constantly scraping and scraping by, and never really changing anything about the service and the level of value that we provide. So that, I don't know if I answered that question, but more or less that's kind of...
You gave a different answer, but yet still that answer is incredibly valuable, because it's more of like how you were thinking through the process and how you develop yourself in the intellectual side of you. The other is the occupational side, right? You started at front desk, correct?
Yes, started at the front desk.
You started at the front desk, just a entry-level base front desk employee, and you worked your way up.
Yes, yep. Cleaning all day, checking people in, greeting them with a smile, doing all those, all the things that your normal gym goer would see the person behind the desk doing that.
Yep. And then you progress through by your grit, by your effort, by the values that get somebody identified for the opportunity for promoting. You were doing those things. The reason why I want to be able to bring this to light is that, look, you may have to take a step back because you conditioned yourself in one direction. As, let's say, like with me, I went into the power industry. I followed my father and my older brother into working in the power plants and going towards operations and all of this. It was a family legacy, right? My brother went operations. My dad went to what's called INC. It's instrumentation and calibration. Now, and that's the highest IQ requirement in that category. The next one is going to be the technical departments, including operations. So I followed that because I love thinking in complexity, because it's just my brain is geared for it. But then I had to take a step back and go into what my heart was more calling for, passion was calling for, because I wasn't that great at being corporate. I was great in attendance and all that, just I didn't have a heart for it. It was all paycheck based. No, and no passion, and there was no career mentality. I just wanted to be able to pay my bills and to be able to raise a family, stuff like that. But it wasn't like it was going to be just another carbon copy life where at the end of it, people would be like, oh, wait, there was a guy named Chad that lived, versus Chad made an impact and changed my life. Changed over, went into personal training through the physical therapy office, took a big step back in money especially. And then after running my company for the holistic personal training company for several years, and I went through the starving artist phase because of the areas that I lacked were hurting me drastically as far as my business growth, and it made me live paycheck to paycheck and sometimes behind that. Then I took, after running my own company, even though it wasn't that successful, I'm the company owner, I have to make these decisions in order to make the company move forward. Then I took the job with this Fox Gym and took a step back as an assistant director, but I was the primary and the guy that made the decisions and made changes, and was a very potent person as far as being able to change people's lives. My marketing and sales was in the trash. It was next to non-existent, but my ability to do the job was significant. So, and then I went into this company, took a step back, and worked my way up from there, making the report card process. You started off young, right? You went right into this company, and then you were at the front desk. How did the process go from front desk to district management? And give people an idea about what the difference of the distance is, like how many different positions there are between entry level to district manager, so they can understand that you went through a lot to get to that point.
Yeah, it reminds me of that, success is not a straight line. It's more of like a zigzag. I started at the desk, worked into management. After about 2 years, it took a little bit of time, and then was able to achieve like an assistant position, right? Because you go through the ranks. So you go desk, leader, assistant, and then management. And then was also blessed in that time to meet my wife through that transition of roles and everything in that company. And it was actually, this is where Johnny came in too. There was a point in which a little bit before Johnny got there, I got demoted. So, went all the way up to management, right? Felt good, was like 22, 23, making decent money, get demoted. And, that was for me the best moment of my life, honestly, where I was able to get back to the grind and rebuild myself back up and reinvent myself in a way that I always look back on it and I always say that's the best moment of my life. And in the moment of it happening, it was the darkest times, of course, right? Because I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to keep the lights on, how I'm going to pay my rent, how I'm going to just even get to work, living off payday advance loans, doing that for a long time. But finally, after meeting someone like Johnny and getting that mentorship and stepping into an uncomfortable position of just relying on just selling, I was able to figure out how to actually do my job better, how to sell, which I wasn't really good at before. I could persuade someone to buy something, but when you actually learn how to have a conversation and provide value, that's a way different experience. But then that allowed me to actually move my way back up and then eventually end up in that middle-level mid-management position. So it was a lot of ups and downs, more downs than ups, I would say, but it was definitely a worthwhile journey. And yeah, that it was not a point A to point B thing. It was more like point A to point B to point C to, so on and so forth. So
yeah, yep, back down to point B and then back up to C. Yeah. Yeah, and that's something else to get people to, if they can pull something out of that too, which there's plenty to pull out of it. But something else to pull is that when you first have something like that happen to you, like you said, it can be dark because it's like your attachment is you're not going to go back. You've done so much to go forward. Why would you go back? And then all of a sudden you're demoted, and then it's like, well, what do you do with that, right? You're now a victim of circumstance. That first time is very common to be a victim of circumstance, where it's like whatever, right? Or it could be your own actions that get you there. Although with you, I highly doubt it was about your own actions. It was probably restructure and something, or politics. That company is very rich in politics, and that's not a good thing. Because it's politics over production, and that's not. You don't want that ever in your company. That is a death spiral. So with you taking that. When you get to the point that you can say, I know that I can stay where I'm at and I can make what I'm making and then potentially gain progress into maybe another promotion level or another pay tier or something like that, or I can take this step back, learn the skills necessary to excel with accelerant because I had to go back and either revisit something. Just because you passed the test doesn't mean you really know the knowledge. It just means that you recognize the knowledge. Yeah. So, like memorization kind of thing, right? So take that step back, and then if you're able to be in that position where you're like, I did this to myself and I did it on purpose, versus I'm just making the best of the circumstances, because that's what I would see it as is 3 different stages of it. Is the first time you feel like a victim of something, and then you're living in that victim mindset, but not necessarily bad. It's just that, hey, this bad stuff happened. You had a big attachment. It was a surprise. And that attachment didn't go away. That's just the pain of the distance to the attachment, whatever the outcome that you're looking for, the goal. You got pushed back because of the emotion. You were getting closer to it before, and then you got all the emotion that's attached to getting there. And then you got that holding you in that depressed, dark, ugly space. When you get to that next place is where you're like, okay, well, my actions got me here. I had to take a demotion. I had to be demoted in order to, maintain. But I'm going to make the best of it. And since that's happening, I'm going to overcome the challenge. Then that third stage is, I don't need to step back, but I do need to learn that. And one of the best ways to learn it is to have it be part of the outcome, right? Is the paycheck and then your asset value to the company. It's not just whether they pay you, it's whether or not they see you to move forward. So for you, making, that stage may have been pushed into it because of restructure, whatever the circumstances were, but your mindset is that I'm not stuck here. And now you can look back and go, look at all of that, the diamond that was being forged, that who you are right now, that was a lump of coal then, and we just knew there was something very precious in that lump of coal. We just didn't have it formulated enough to go, there's a diamond coming out of that, right? Because coal's still valuable. Yeah. Learn it. Yeah. You make heat. But the diamond's the thing that everybody wants, unless they're cold. So, all right. So that's a lesson to take away from the book of Damon. Is, you might have to take a step back, but accept it. And by accepting it, the darkness kind of goes away faster. And then you can say, how am I going to improve because of this? So if you're a business owner and you don't have that, sometimes the cost of running the business If you stay in the red too long, you're out, just because you have a finite amount of resources. And if you have an unlimited amount of resources, then you don't have enough skin in the game to grow. In my opinion, most people aren't going to. So you got to have a high tolerance to risk if you want to be in the category of a unicorn entrepreneur. So you have to be able to take those opportunities, and I do consider that to be you and Johnny and Paul, and even help Drew and a few other people that fall into that category. So a lot of the people that I'm interviewing on here are more of those types of people. Anyway, not to digress any further, I just wanted to throw that in because I want to make sure that the people that are watching be able to see really the precious person that I see you to be, and the way that I see the future for you. There are very few people I've met, and I go, no matter what happens to this person, they're always going to be okay. So you guys, all of who I just mentioned, all fall into that category. No matter what, you will make things not only work, you will only improve. Kind of like for the people that are Dragon Ball Z fans, right? I'm going to use it. Yeah. It's the big guys thing, whatever. It's just like we become more like the Goku and Vegeta type thing, where it's just like beat me down, make me stronger. And that's the way we are as entrepreneurs. It's like I welcome the challenges. I just have a specific threshold of challenges before the business needs to be put on hold or stopped. And then maybe reevaluate and then go back at it later. There is that the scale value. Now, and I've hit that a couple of times in my life, but I'm always going back. I consider that what my previous life up until my last contract was Rocky 1. Rocky got his ass kicked in Rocky 1. But he was the champion even though he lost at the end, right? Because we all started falling in love with Rocky. We all started realizing Rocky has so much more character, so much more value, so much more reason to care about him because he's on the hero's journey. And then in Rocky 2, he wins, but he and Apollo are now friends. Mm-hmm. So I'm in that Rocky 2 phase. I'm getting there, and it's like I'm not contending with anybody and I got to overcome an enemy or nothing like that. That's not it. It's just the bonding that we go through and we play off each other. We're sparring constantly, but we're not making our business go at each other. We're taking our ideas and we're taking our results and we're saying, this is how it's working for us. And we've created a council of conversation, a board set of members that we can either in person or out of person, where you're not even there. Because I know who you are from the level I know you to be, you sit at that council with other people that whenever there's a tough decision for me, I throw that into my own head and say, hey guys, from who I know you guys to be and how I know you to think, I want you to analyze this issue and then come up with some outcomes. And then I'll play it out in real life with you guys too. Like, hey, this is what I thought, this is how they went. I've used, basically it's more like the spirit concept of who you guys are based off how I know you. So I got this from that concept a long time ago when I read How to Influence People. Damn it, I forgot the name of it. It's by Napoleon Hill. How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah.
Yes, that's in that book. And I'm like, that makes perfect sense. And I'd have done it before, but I didn't have it structured like that. Now I have it structured like that. You sit at that table, by the way. So, yeah. Yeah, I've got some people there. My dad's there, even though he passed in 2006. That's the board. If I had to put together a Fortune 500 company, these are the people I'd have at it. Right? It's just because I know there's always good hands. I know we're always going to be there for each other. And I know we're all going after the same thing, which is success for all of us, not just success for me.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Develop that in your life. Find people that meet that kind of criteria and put them there. And if you don't have it, start those conversations like we have. So, I'm meaning that for the audience, not for you, Damon, because you're obviously that's what
sure.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, any thoughts on that before we move on? Because we're going to run out of time before questions.
No.
And this is mostly on me.
Thoughts. It's all good. This is fun.
All right. So, your company, how you work, you do in person, you do online, and then you can also do just programs that you give to people. You don't even deal with them, right? So, you got several different layers of how you service people, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And did you start that way?
Is my video off?
Hold on. Something just popped up and it said, yeah, your video went off.
Oh, okay. Here, 1 second. Let me fix that.
while we're in this moment of working our way through some things here, it's the things that have impressed me about Damon is that even while he was working full-time as a district manager, which I occupied that position as well, but under a different district. So I understand the complexities and the demand that it puts on you. You know, you could be up until 11 o'clock at night completing documents and following up with things that you need to do, and then or you get an immediate deadline you didn't know was coming. You know, like, hey, I need this by, the end of the day, and you're like, well, I've got all these other things. And so the life of a district manager in the box gym world can be incredibly hectic, and often is. And Damon still, with all of that going on, because you can control what you can control, which you get better at based off your understanding of the position that you're in. And then if nothing else intruded, you would become incredibly proficient, and you would be maximizing the return on investment as you being an asset by the company, by your ability to get a task complete very quickly and effectively, not just with short time, effective, efficient tasks. But then you get the chaos that comes from someplace else, right? You'll have your boss or their boss say, we need to pivot and change direction, and then you've got all this stuff that shows up, and they're like, we need it done by the end of the day, and you find out at 5 o'clock in the evening, or in the late afternoon. Then you got to come up with it before you go to bed. All of that stuff going on, and he still put himself through real estate school, still got his real estate license, and was servicing in real estate while still occupying that position. So you can take a plate that has X amount of ability on it, where you say, this is it, this is a full plate, I do these things through the day, there's no way I can fit more. And you don't look for how to fit more because you can't get a bigger plate. You just got to figure out how to put things on it differently, right? And that's something that Damon has mastered at this stage. To what he has done, he's created a mastery of it. Does it mean that he's fully mastered it? Not necessarily. So it's we lost your video again, bud. I think your phone might be overheating. Or
yeah, it's my camera. I guess it's overheating.
Okay. Yeah. So to add that to what Damon was doing is just know that you can grow. You can put more on your plate. You're 24 hours in a day. You can't get any more. You can't beg, borrow, or steal any more money or any more time of the day. It's how efficient you become at things. And when you become more efficient, here's a challenge that middle level type people do, is they take a task that takes an hour and they get better at it, and now it takes them 30 minutes or 15 minutes because of their proficiency and accuracy because of practice. Then they take 45 minutes off. They buy themselves breaks. As far as anybody else knows, that's what they can do in an hour. But to the person's ability to produce, they did it in 15 minutes. Then they got that 45 minutes, so what do you do with it? I wrote about this in my book as well. What do you do with that as far as, like, it's not just time management, it's time productive management. If you want to be the extraordinary, it's the extra to the ordinary. And the extra to the ordinary in this is you just did a task that takes an hour and you did it in 15 minutes. Now you take another task that takes an hour and maybe this one's not quite as proficient yet. It takes you 45 minutes. You have 2 tasks done in 1 hour. If you keep practicing like that, that second task will eventually come down most likely. It depends on the total threshold of requirements and time and all of that, because there's only so much you can really do in a certain amount of time. The more experienced you are, the better you are at it. Maybe you take that second task and you bring it down to 15 minutes again. So now you have 30 minutes worth of production. Then you have another 30 minutes that you can stuff something in there. Well, take another task. Say the next one takes you 30 minutes normally. Put it in. Now you got an hour, but you have 3 tasks completed. That third task that may not have as much time, efficiency, or that kind of thing put on it, experience, now you can whittle that down to 10 minutes maybe, 5 minutes. Before you know it, you've been able to stack 5 to 6 to maybe 7 or more things into 1 hour. That would take somebody else an entire day to do. And they go, how did you do that? And you did it because you didn't take that 45-minute break after you became proficient from that 1 hour to the 15 minutes to bring it down to 15 minutes and you take 45 minutes off, or screwing around with social media or whatever. You didn't go that route. What you did is you added more to it. Now, within 1 day, you can complete what people take a week to do. Now you're entering into that space like the Elon Musks. You're entering into that space like the Jeff Bezoses. But I like Elon more than I like Jeff Bezos, but I appreciate him as a business person, and I study his business model. I'm not saying I appreciate him as, like, I really like this guy. I can appreciate he grew his business, and I can respect that. How he did it and that kind of thing is different. I'm talking about Jeff Bezos, not Elon Musk. So, but that's how they become the way they are. They have a preset value of traits that make them good at what they do, and then there's the next stuff. So I see Damon this way, I see Johnny this way, I see Paul this way. You know, I see a lot of these guys, RJ, Drew. It's just put more on, and we're going to be able to come up with more product and production. So, how you doing over there on the camera, big guy?
I don't know. This is honestly, this is actually crazy because I haven't experienced this with the camera before. So,
you have we can run on the black screen if you like, just to continue on, but or if you have a photo just to pop up and let it just be a placekeeper. Either one.
Yeah, let me see.
But we'll move on, and then if you can work it, if you can fix it, it's all right. We're going to run out of time anyway if we don't move on to the questions, and I don't.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
I don't stop doing TED Talks.
All right. Yeah, we'll go for it.
Okay. All right. So next, let's get to how long you said. So I do have a cheat sheet here, by the way. I have questions I send out. They fill them out. They send them back, so I can better understand where we're at, and then interview from that position, which we expound upon every one of the questions. But as far as your break-even timeline and when you're able to pay yourself, your break-even timeline. How long did it take you before you hit break-even? And by the way, what I mean by break-even for the audience is there's what it costs to do business, and then when business doesn't cost you to do it, and then there's when business pays you. So the red line is whenever it costs you to do business. That's the early stages for a lot of companies, and that's what I advise. You need to have a certain amount of money in order to start before start without money, unless it's something that it takes very little capital or resources to start. So that's the bottom side, is the red line. Break even is where it no longer costs you money to run the company or to do things, but it's not paying you yet. It's just you're at that break even. And then there's the profit side, and that's where you're actually able to make money, and the business is able to pay you. So, Damon, how long was it before you hit break even?
I mean, honestly, so this is going to sound a little bit crazy to anyone that listens, but literally probably the first few days.
Okay.
And there's some insight I can give into that as to why it was like that. But basically, what I realized right out the gate is I can charge the same for what everyone does, or I can provide so much value that it exceeds what people could expect. And that's kind of the direction I decided to go. And when you do that, when you're not afraid to step out of the box, if you will, right? Again, these big companies where they fall short and why none of them really last that long is because they're all trying to just commoditize, and they end up at the same level selling the same thing. So I saw an opportunity to charge way more, and as a result, I was able to break even right away. And even break into some profit right away on the first transaction. And also, given the fact that my business is very easy to fulfill, there's not a whole lot of demand on my time or on my end other than just time demand. That's really something that made it even easier. So I was able to break even and even hit profit right on the first transaction. And that's simply just because I knew my value, my worth, and I did the math early to figure out what I would need to make sure that I could do that. So, yeah, I was fortunate and blessed in that sense. But also, again, like you said, all that experience. I think one time you and I had a conversation some years ago where you described it as currency, right? Like all this time and energy spent was really just currency into building what I was able to build now. And that also allowed me to see profit instantly.
Yeah. There you go. And I also refer to, so it's the actions you take now as a currency for the future that you're buying yourself. There's also like stress and how do you manage stress and what do you refer to stress as? And that's, for me, stress is tuition for the future you're creating. So you're paying for your future through the stress values, and that to me has always made me embrace stress differently. So why your break even was so early is because your cost to do business was low and your experience in the industry was high. And if you have that, you can start at a low cost and then grow, versus trying to outrun a debt before the money you have saved runs out. and then you've got to either reevaluate or close. So you started with, it's not necessarily you started safe because you were starting safe. You started safe because you were prepared for it. And you realized, hey, it's just time for me to do this. It's time to take action. So how long before you could pull a paycheck?
I mean, again, it was pretty much right away. Just because the way I had organized all the expenses. You know, the thing I think is that we should also mention here too, being that most of my business is online, easy to fulfill, I also have very little overhead. You know, I have gyms that I met the owners and they've permitted me to bring clients in at that point and train them. So, you know, I was able to really pull a paycheck right away after I was able to get everything, you know, situated as far as expenses go and things like that, budgeting. I was able to really pull a paycheck pretty close to right away. And again, this is nothing on a bragging level in any way. It's really just I wanted to purposely design my business in such a way that I could make money early on. And I have a lot of respect for the people that decide to open their own boxes, pay their own leases, try to generate leads and clients to come in and doing it that way. But I just wanted to make my storefront virtual to prevent, you know, that overhead in the early stages of it. So.
Yeah, and to add to that, a couple of things real quick. One is, if you are one of those people that want to go ahead and open up a box, be it that I am, you know, an independent business consultant, and I specifically target the independent box gym owners. If you're one of those people, message me, make a comment, or as far as the video when we publish it, I'll do an evaluation for you and let you know where you're at, and then we can talk about anything after that. There was another point that I wanted to get to about what you were saying, and to me it had a great deal of value. And I can assure everybody you don't come from a place of bragging. You're a very humble guy, and you just are trying to share your experience. So that's great. If this idea comes back up, I'll get back to it. Otherwise, unfortunately we have to move on. But like I said, it'll probably come up, and I'll sound like I have Tourette's.
Yeah, I sound like that all the time.
Like, what the hell? We were talking about that a while ago. All right. So now with the company, let's see. Sorry. Okay.
Oh, you're good.
As far as the employees that you have in the company, you have just yourself, correct?
Yeah, just myself. Okay. Just myself. You know, in the future, I have some plans to bring on some people on a admin capacity to just kind of help me do back end things. But you know, at the moment, that's also another thing helping me keep that payroll as profitable as possible. You know, all to me. So.
Yeah, and it's a great thing to provide work for other people, but you always need to make it smart work, and then you be able to add to the company and grow. And no matter what the big idea in politics or you know the way that people believe things, right? You're a millennial, I'm a Gen X. People say, oh, the millennials, they're just entitled, and Gen Z is just entitled. No, you'll always have problems with generations of the way they see things and all of that, as far as against the way that you know success models work. So I encourage people to let go of those ideas. So just know that everybody's unique, and do not try to stereotype them based off whatever group that you try to put them in. It has like Damon, in a heartbeat I'd hire Damon. Like, Damon, we got this club, and if I were to send him over to it, that club would be up and running and profitable within an incredibly short period of time, just because of the way you be. So, you know, it's a Gen X to millennial, it would be not even a heartbeat offer. Right, I'd be like, here it is. Here's my proposal. You know, accept or deny. Right, or negotiate. So, so don't bracket yourselves that way for you know anybody who's watching, and learn how businesses have made it work and how you can use those models to make your own business work, even if you are in a different generation. Again, I'm not going to look at you with any prejudice because of that. I'm going to look at it and say, hey, these are your trait values. This is what I like about you. This is what I think can benefit myself and yourself. And I see these other things that I can bring out in you if I develop you, and or that you're going to bring out me by me developing you or you developing me, right? It's just always that reciprocal relationship I intend to create. Well, hey, Damon.
Hey.
Just so everybody knows, this may actually just start right where it left off whenever we lost internet connection, but my son unplugged the router. So yeah, I was over here just going on. I don't know how much actually got recorded out of what I was talking about. So I'll try to find it in editing. But if nothing else, hey, this is how this stuff works when you're in the earlier stages of something. You know, like this is an earlier stage for me in having these conversations because my goal is to be something similar to the Joe Rogan approach, but for entrepreneurs and for businesses. Because I want to be able to help people grow, and that's one of the things that I think is a really leading value of Joe Rogan is that he leads with passion and curiosity. I do too, incredibly curious. So where we were last, I was actually going on a little bit of a tirade, but unfortunately I can't finish the thought because I don't know where it left off, and realizing what happened, I kind of like got derailed a little bit. So we'll move on, unless there's something you want to throw in there real quick, Damon, and then we'll go to the next question.
Yeah, no, I think this is, I will say, between my camera and your router, I think no matter what, we're providing immense value to anyone listening, and I think that's the key. And I think anyone that is listening or who's gotten up to this point is going to take a lot from the conversation. So I think either way, we've accomplished our mission very well. So
yeah, you know, it's always look. It's the same as like when you're going out looking for ore, right? Like, and what I mean by ore is like, you know, precious metals, like silver, copper, you know, hell, even iron has value, right? And gold and platinum and things when we ore the stuff out of the ground. When you're going in to try to find it, you have, I want to get there, I just don't know where it is, and you let passion and faith dig. Right? And before you know it, you get a little trace of something and it starts to reward the faith direction and then reinvigorates the passion. It'll get to the point you feel like you're exhausted on passion and that your faith is just beat up. And it feels like maybe I'm on the wrong path. You don't know when you're going to strike the vein. In that particular terminology, the vein is the ore that you're looking for, which is the precious material. So once you find it, you know, you might have a modicum of success with it, and then you feel like you're back into the grind. You never really get out of the grind. As you mentioned earlier, ups and downs, right? It's not a straight line. You know, peaks and valleys. It's never losing sight of where you want to go. No matter what, work your way through it. You will be rewarded eventually. So it just stick with it. You know, and that's something that, again, I acknowledge you guys for, my council people, you know, that that's you. You know, we've all been in the trenches. We're still in the trenches. We're never getting out of them. We just get really good at it, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. That's the whole goal. Because this is also, you don't want to get rich, lose it, and never be rich again. You don't want to be successful, lose it, and never be successful again. You want to be able to say, you know what, I was successful. I may have lost it all, but I know how to do it again, and then you do it again. And then you may do it on a third time. You may have to work that way and build it up again. Doesn't mean once you have success, you stay successful. The success ability is there as long as you continue to adapt it. But you can be like a lottery winner. That's success, right? I mean, you were chosen. You put a risk out by putting a very small amount of money by comparison to the return on the investment. Huge ROI, but no ability to create unless you start paying for the ability to create and using what you got as a resource to develop yourself in other areas of resources, not just the accumulation of things, but also what's up here. Those are resource values. Then you can start recreating, but that is some of the most depressed people on the planet are people that won the lottery.
Yeah.
So, like suicide's actually a pretty high rate for a lot of those people, and you know, or becoming worse off than they were when they won. You know, losing everything plus more. You know, losing what you had before you even won the lottery. You know, because just not knowing how to be successful long term. This also happens with professional athletes and people like that, and there are businesses out there that I would consider to be parasitic. They look for inexperienced, ignorant people that are successful. And then they leverage off of them by getting them involved in things and siphoning money off of them because they convince them to do it versus build them up to maintain long-term success. So I try to get those people in the business world because I want them to be successful, and I'm not trying to do that. I want a very reciprocal and harmonious relationship built with a solid foundation. Because later on, we'll all contribute to each other continuously, but later on we may have a big moment, and I need people to be resources with me and I can bring something else to the table for everybody. So, so profitable, you were able to pay yourself very quickly because you strategized and you were smart about it. You know, very similar to the RJ situation, which is also just he worked his butt off, you know, like you. All right. So where do you see yourself in the next year, 5 years, 10 years?
All right. Yeah. So the next, where do I see myself in the next year, 5 years, 10 years? So in the next year, ideally, I want to be in a position where hopefully I'm able to 10x the revenue that we're bringing in now. In the next 5 years, I'd like to see this maybe reach a point where we can scale and have other people on my team with me, and you know, just kind of being able to provide value and content more on a broad basis. Obviously, if I have help and extra hands in the business, it's going to be easier to reach a wider audience. And then I guess in the next 10 years, I'd like to be at a point where I've built up something that not only employs, you know, a lot of great people, but also is recognizable in the marketplace. There's a lot of room, I think, and a lot of opportunity. Fitness is an ever-growing business. The industry is ever-growing and ever-changing. So I think, you know, in the next 10 years, definitely being one of those powerhouse brands would be the ideal goal. But the interesting thing about all this is, you know, just like most great ideas, I kind of stumbled into this. So having that long-term vision and approach is always something that's in my mind, but, you know, I haven't really sat down and actually put a full plan together on how I'll do that in the next 5 to 10 years. But of course, as I continue to build this up, I believe that's going to become even more evident and, you know, easier to visualize too. So.
Yeah, you know, what comes to mind is also, is for me, I want to look at, you know, we're either in the beginning where we're just trying to figure out how to even get started. Then we're in that we got started, but we don't necessarily clearly see how the future is going to be. But from what I'm seeing right now and the return on the time and how I'm seeing growth and satisfaction that I'm having with the company, I could foresee it become this other thing because you want it to grow. You don't want it to stay stagnant, right? Because if you're stagnant, the business before they're actually dying, it's not sitting in place. You're not a placeholder. Somebody else is going to, they're positioning themselves to overcome you. So you always have to be in that process to gain that kind of access to be better than other companies in the sense that you're providing a better service and your customers are more satisfied with it. So do you foresee yourself creating a brick and mortar, or do you foresee yourself going in and changing departments, or do you see yourself staying in the ether of the world, you know, like the internet world? How do you foresee, or what would you like to see your business become in that 1 year, 5 year, 10 year line, in the physical sense of it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I do foresee it probably remaining mostly online, just because I'm very comfortable in that space, but also I am comfortable in the brick and mortar situation. So, you know, what I've envisioned thus far is if I were to ever take it to a brick and mortar situation, it would likely be because of the workspace and having a place to actually build a business at rather than in my own home office. And I think that I could see that also branching out into maybe opening something up to the public and having a dedicated space to be able to service clients and work with people. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit of a blend. I do think that the brick and mortar situation would have to be contingent upon the amount of, I guess, like the amount of people I'd want serviced, you know. Other than that, the only brick and mortar idea that I've had is really just to have my own office space, and that's really it. But yeah, mostly online, to answer the broad base of that question, mostly online.
So would you be open to a little, from what I know you to be and what I can kind of envision the future to look like for you? Would you be open to a little something on that?
Yeah, sure.
So coming from my background and how I can, like, this is what I do with people is I come up with, you know, I understand who you are to the level that I do, and then I come up with ideas about what could be the next best thing, and then the benefits, pros and cons to it. So do you like the CrossFit model? Do you like the personal training gym model? Do you like the box gym model? Do you like just doing the internet model? Which is the types that you can do blends too? And then if we do blends, I'm going to ask percentage, like percentage of this versus percentage of that, and how would you envision that? And then I can go through some pros and cons, because I have an idea for you, but I don't want to throw it out there and make that idea something that I'm so attached to without understanding a little bit more about what your desires are to see.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback off of the last question, I guess, it's going to be mostly digital for me.
Okay. And now is that 1, 5, and 10? Or just no matter what you do, it's going to be predominantly digital?
Yeah, no matter what I do, it's going to be predominantly digital. The idea is to make fulfillment and that much easier. I have very little interest in any sort of physical opportunity, but obviously for the right package in which I offer, I do have that option available for people to be able to meet with me physically. But my business, the root of my business, will be a digital business. Fantastic.
And it's still lining up with what I was thinking. So on a percentage basis, from your perspective right now, you would say, what would they, 80, 90% digital, internet-based, and then maybe 10 or 20% physical? Something along those lines? Or if you were to gauge it or put a percentage together to give us all kind of an idea of what you could envision the future look like.
Yeah. So, I guess time horizon of where we're at now, and this can kind of go to the question of where I see it in the next year to 5 years. Right now, because of the foundation and the beginning of this, mind you, this is only a few months in. So right now, we're probably about 70% in person. But the idea and what will end up happening is, as right now I'm accumulating content and accumulating information, and I'm accumulating enough of a library that I'll be able to make this mostly a digital focused business. So we haven't even gotten into ad spend. We haven't even gotten into promoting on socials. We haven't even gotten into any of that. We're still in the very infancy of this business. And, in this infancy stage, we're currently working with clients in person, but that will transition to a more stringent online model. So I guess if you wanted to look at it from the percentage basis, you could say that right now we're about 80-20 in person, online. But this business was founded to be an online business, but I'm in the beginning stages where I need to first collect the content and the product information to be able to build that to be mostly online. But at the end of the day, after, I'd say, to go back to answer that question, in the next year, in order to 10x the revenue the way I intend to and the way I've laid out, I will need to take this business to be 80% digital at that point.
Okay. So what I'm envisioning, and it's best that I understand it, so you really do want to just keep this mostly online. And the benefits, the pros and cons to this, right? Pros and cons if you keep it predominantly online or exclusively online is you can automate. You would have minimum requirements for yourself once you get a book of business, or the library of business is probably the better term, not book of business, but library of business. Then you have options of tier values that you can sell in. You have the free, then the beginner, then you have the intermediate and the advanced, and whatever you want to go beyond that. And then price associated to the tier, subscription-based, or one-time payments, or payment plans. So a lot of different ways you can look at creating that, but the biggest part of it is going to be content, and then it's going to be in your ad spend, and how you create the potential of viral content. So not a bad thing at all. What I'm foreseeing, and for who I know you to be and how detail-oriented you are, and how to keep you constantly tied into the market so that you don't become irrelevant based off of one of the problems that people have in this is that when they go digital only, is that they have a high probability of becoming, first it's a novelty, then they become irrelevant. So the novelty is you're new and it's cool and whatever, but then eventually everybody else joins in, then it's no longer a novelty, it becomes the norm, because novelty is something new. Norm is everybody's doing it, or the majority of large population values doing it, and it's saturated typically. And then you have the antiquated or the outdated. If you wanted to avoid the outdated, and a huge benefit for you because you want to be paid for your time exposure and your abilities, you just create the elite category. And the elite category is the people that you see on site that you could also create content with. You still have your pulse on the community and trends because you're directly working with people with their needs, not just your own perception based off what you see regularly or what you can collect out of data from the internet. So if you keep, let's say, you have a price point of minimum is $125 a session for 30 minutes because of your expertise. You're going to draw on the kind of clientele that are more likely to be compliant with your direction so that they can see the changes, and then you can highlight them, but they would be under the agreement that if they work with you, they also consent for you to use them as marketing material. But you language it so that it's more honoring than to say, hey, I'm just going to use you. So, but if you keep a small percentage of your business, even if it's, let's say, 10%, and you have an elite club that only allows 50 members or 100 members, and all of those are paid trainers, or paid clients. They're not open to the public kind of gym. Then you can film on-site, you can pull ideas on-site, and you can create content from where you're at to influence the other side, and then show your benefit and success of both, but also minimize your actual effort on your side because you're not putting too much time in it or doing a 40-hour week on it. You can make your hours where it only fits certain people anyway, so you're making exclusivity, and from that can draw a lot of people in because of the fact that it's exclusive and it's a high-ticket item, which makes people want to pay the money even if they don't know the value because they know that if there's a chance to get in, they need to take the urgency approach. So it's an idea to work with. I can see you be successful with it because of the way you are. But I think the other side of it is there would be minimal time required to run that versus doing, a 40-hour week in person. But then it also gives you the benefit of not having the removal of people influencing you for understanding how they receive you directly. Be able to read all the body language values versus just what they say in a letter or something that they type up. So I'm not married to you taking that direction or that idea. It's just something that for me as a consultant side and knowing how I can see the future and how it has changed over time and the benefits of always having your finger on the pulse and the joy of seeing change with highly compliant clients, it could give you the celebrity concept. Because it really, if you go that route and you're successful at it, you will start getting celebrities. Because they're the ones that are going to want to pay for your time and they're the ones that are willing to make it work in their schedule because they need you.
Yeah,
so
I mean, that's why. No, I was going to say, too, to that point, that's also why businesses trust you to come in and consult and provide them that insight, right? So you can kind of give them, that view and that vantage point that, may not be considered from someone who's just starting it up. So, yeah, absolutely. No, there's a lot of value in what you said there.
Mm-hmm. I can see athletes coming towards you. You're good at what you do. You're incredibly good at what you do. And you connect so well, and your desire to grow and develop is so high that you're going to be the best, but you're not going to be the best at anybody else's cost unless they don't know how to compete. You're not going to be competing to take away from them. You're going to be competing to just be the best of who you are. Now, and there's a difference in that, right? If you're going that route to be the best of who you are the one that's going to make the greatest progress. Now, others have a set point where they just start to throttle out once they hit that. Okay, I'm better than this other person concept. You're not in that world. You're the other one. You're the one that wants to be the innovator and make change and help others. So, but anyway, something to think about. The pros and cons on that. There are always going to be pros and cons that we want to measure for every decision that we make. And I really could see you becoming a celebrity trainer with that direction. It may take some time before it draws that in. But you first start bringing in the wealthy people in the area, and from that they have connections with other people. And before you know it, they're making referrals, and then next thing you know, you've got an athlete or an actor or somebody, or a singer, whomever, that comes in and wants you to train them because they know it's not easy to get in with you. Yeah. Right. But you have all this content online that shows so much more. So I don't foresee you be the CrossFit style guy. We've never really had a conversation that made me lead to believe that you're a CrossFit style. It's just the reason why I said CrossFit is that's one of the lower cost startups, one of the lower cost locations. So, but as time goes on, you could go that route and you can make an incredibly good product with a CrossFit model. You don't need to do their programming styles. You can do your own, just use their model. So, and I encourage that because being a corrective exercise specialist, I'm not a fan of that model because of the wear and tear of the joints and the overall conditioning of the body and the longevity of that conditioning is not something that I personally desire to see my clients go through. So, but anyway, not to digress or to spend too much time on the question, but that's just to give something else to it. And this is an idea, food for thought.
Yeah, no, that's great.
All right, next question. You ready, big guy?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Are you always ready? All right. So, well, we kind of went over that one already. The next question is, are you profitable? If so, when did you pull your first paycheck? You did say that earlier. You said that was relatively very, very quick. And that's because of, for anybody watching, that's whenever I refer to an incubator. You incubated your opportunity, and you didn't have to have a high cost startup. You strategized in a way that made it incredibly effective. That's because you incubated it. You also had the skills necessary to be successful when you started because you had an industry experience of being successful, and you just made it your own instead of for anybody else. So, all right. Okay. And right now you just have the one location at your office. Nothing's wrong with that. That was the next question, by the way. Is it question 19? All right. Now, Damon, what's your key to success, and what do you differently than? Wow, I misspelled that. I got to go back and grammatically correct. What do you do differently than your competition? My key to success is overwhelming value. Okay. And let's do that. I'm going to have you say it because I'm actually reading your answer.
Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah.
Young host, baby.
That's all right.
Not really young, but you.
Nah, you're young. You're not even in your prime yet.
I'll send you that $20 that I owe you for every compliment you give me. Okay.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So what's your key to success? What do you do differently than your competition?
Yeah, I think my key to success is probably mostly just staying true to my values, and not swaying and being influenced, because there's so much noise and static, and so many people are so easily swayed by this piece of advice or that piece of advice, and you kind of start to lose yourself in all of the noise. So I think as far as what I do different and what brings value for me, or how I separate myself from others, is really just trying to provide immense amounts of value, an overwhelming amount, to where it really just makes any price or any number I ask for my service seem like pennies on the dollar. At the end of the day, people just want to know that they're getting value for what they're paying in exchange for their hard-earned dollars, and if you can do that, if you can provide that level of value and service and level of inspiration also to people, I think the biggest draw for me is really going to be the human element to what I provide, and that also ties into the advice that you mentioned with the online and the digital route. Is there's a lot of noise and this focus on going viral and these things, but I just think that being genuine is something that people can read from miles away. So that, honestly, to me, is probably the biggest differentiator for my services and the what I provide that would allow me to stand out, really.
Yeah, I'm going to add something.
I hope I answered that.
Yeah, you did. And so from what I'm hearing on that, what makes you the difference is the value that you bring to it and the genuineness that you offer that value. The direction, the advice, and then the information. Here's something that I want to make sure that other people that are going the social media influencer route, what Damon said is he just gave you a diamond, and if you didn't hear it, I'll bring it back up because it's a true diamond of the truth, right? And that is being genuine. That is being authentic. Here's what we've been experiencing. The group that have been most caught up in social influencers or online influencers are going to be millennials and zennials, which is below Generation X, right? So we've got the millennial generation, which is going to be Damon, and then the younger generation, which is now coming into adulthood, and it has been a little into adulthood is zennials, or zillennials. I think it's zennials is the term. But anyway, so here's the thing that they've been going through. They have been watching others show a false reality. They have everything that is the desirable paradise life, the heaven on earth experience, right? Like I wake up at this time at 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. or whatever, and then I get my day started, then I have a nice little frotha mappuccino with greens and whatever the hell else they put out there, right? And they go through their day, and all you see is just this, I wish I had that person's life. It's a concept of sales, right? It's the grass is greener over there. Follow me, find out how to grow your own green grass, right? Reality is that's not reality. That is a fabricated Hollywood-style concept of reality is great and beautiful on that side. But when you're genuine and honest, what happens is the other people that are fake, eventually as you mature, you start to realize that either the reality that you're seeing in these videos is unattainable. Then you start going, what is attainable? Because I've seen struggle. Then you have somebody like you, Damon, that says, you're going to have struggles. You're going to go through hard times. I'm showing you that by being sincere and by being authentic. I've had my own challenges, and it makes you human. It makes you the hero's journey. It's not the elite concept, which is what these younger people are putting out, is the elite concept. Life is easy. I look amazing. If you're not doing it right, I'm going to help you get there. How many years do you need to subscribe to somebody like that before you realize you're not going to have their life? You know, like, and trust them, but you can't produce the reality they're telling you can. The product is broken because they're not being sincere. It's fabricated. Get to you, you will start collecting the defectors. So the people that said, that's not real and I can't do it, it's never worked for me, but this other person's gone through the grind and I've been able to witness the grind. I see that they've gone through their challenges. He's speaking to my issues in life. Not my desires, my issues. That younger generation right now is looking at the desires they want and they're avoiding their issues. For you, you're going to be like, these are the issues, this is how you overcome it. These are the problems you're dealing with, this is how you're going to get better. So you're going to get those detractors. Just stay patient and stick with it. The trend will change and it won't favor that group of people. Eventually that'll become an antiquated model. Right now it's the novelty model. It'll get to the point it's outdated because they're not sincere, they're not real. You get a guy who's in somewhere in his 20s, he's got 3% body fat, he looks immaculate, but you don't know what drugs he's taking. They're called PEDs, performance and, what is that? Performance, shit.
Yeah, performance.
Yes, performance enhancing drugs. Thank you. Sure. So you get that, right? You know, like I've spoken about, like the Liver King and people like that. I don't know him personally. His email may have been faked, whatever, but from what I've seen, it looks like he's allegedly been taking a lot of drugs to make himself look amazing. From my experience and my education, I say it kind of lines up with the accusation, but at the same time, there's always that one-off. You have genetic, potential that is unrealized or very rare in our species, and they have that ability. I'm not one of those people, and I know what it takes for changing a lot of people's lives, and I'm now in the multi-thousands of people that I've worked with throughout my career in fitness, and I haven't come across that genetic anomaly myself. Point is again, you don't know if the person that you're watching is on a bunch of PEDs. Why is that important to understand? If you yourself don't take them and you don't do the diet regimen and the workout regimen that they're doing, you won't see the same results no matter how hard you try. Unless you're that 1% of the, I'd say 0.001% of human beings. Then maybe you'd see that result. But you're a lottery if that's the case. And I promise you, if you're watching this video, you're probably not that person. You got to work for it. We all have. So those people will detract. And then by being sincere, you're going to be the safety for them because they're going to realize, hey, I do need to work on this and take personal responsibility and stop fantasizing my life away. I need to work towards my fantasies and make them reality. Somebody like you is that guide because you're going to give that reality. So when they defect, you're the one that's going to catch it. Be patient, stick with it. You will see an increase over time. Not just because you have gotten better at your craft, but just at the simple fact that you are who you are at your core. And those people will finally see the value in it once they get over the drunkenness of the influencer. Because that's the way I see it. They're just drunk on the idea of the influencer. They're drunk on the outcome of paradise. So anyway, I'm not going to go further on that necessarily for now, but do you have any Any thoughts on that before we go to the next question?
No, not really. I mean, I think you hit it home. This, like you were saying, there's just so much out there, so many false prophets, so many things that people can catch on to and not realize and know any better. And you mentioned Liver King. You may or may not know this, but he was exposed, and then he came out and actually admitted to all of that being true. I mean, the guy was taking like 12 plus different things.
Yeah.
So
what I saw was 20 grand a month in supplements, but he did admit to it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So 20 grand a month. For people that aren't aware, when you get on human growth hormone, that is one of the most expensive performance-enhancing drugs that you can take. It's insane how much that stuff costs. So if it sounds like an exorbitant amount of money, yeah, it's mostly because of HGH.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredibly expensive. So I haven't taken it myself. I think it's kind of obvious with my physique. I mean, I look pretty good, but I don't look like that dude, which I guess he's like 5'4" or some shit. I'm not knocking him. I'm not. I don't cherish that he misled. But I'm not going to make him a living pariah. He still has value. What can we take from value and support him and to get back on the right path? Because he just misled us because, hey, how many influencers don't? So this is the thing about people like Damon and I, because we care about maturity and development, and we don't want to mislead you. We want to give you the reality. This is going to suck, and then it's going to be great, and then it's going to suck, then it's going to be great, then it's going to suck, then it's going to be great. That's the cycle, like Damon had mentioned earlier. It's not a direct line to success. It's at peaks and valleys along the way. And when you think you've had the lowest valley, you probably haven't yet. But that's okay because your greatest peak hasn't come yet. You just got to stick with it. So thanks, by the way, for updating that. I wasn't aware that he had came out and that he had accepted that. So it's no longer you can say allegedly, it's fact because he said it's true. So, all right, thank you for that. All right, COVID taught us a lot. You and I were together during COVID.
Yes, yeah.
So,
wow, man.
Yeah, it was. Oh, God, what a crazy time. So what did it teach you? It taught us a lot about doing business and during the shutdown, how do we manage and all of this. Now, we had to work in a different world at that time. But now, that doesn't mean that it's just that we worked in that occupation and therefore our roles were X and that's all we were allowed to experience. You and I aren't those kind of people. We look to how to create solutions to challenges and how can we navigate the unknown. That's the mark of a surviving entrepreneur. So at that time, your role at the time, you were what?
My role at the time was a district manager of personal training at that time.
Okay. And then what did you learn from it as it's the big picture of it? Because at this point, I don't think we've seen the last of the shutdowns, lockdowns, and the overreach of government. I don't think we've seen it. I think we're going to see more of it because they saw a success model. But for you, what was your overall experience? And then what did you come out of that with understanding to move the business along?
Yeah, oh man, COVID, well, hopefully they don't transcript that and then I don't flag your video, so I'm sorry. The pandemic definitely taught me quite a bit. So personally, what it did, personally and professionally, I had my first online business still running at that time. It was basically just e-commerce, selling products on Amazon. We ended up we almost had to file a bankruptcy. We were fortunate enough that it worked out in a way where I was able to actually get out of it, break even, no profit, nothing from all the COVID, the pandemic stuff that happened. So that was my first lesson and introduction into learning of how the pandemic could affect me and affect business. More so for the big box gym that you and I worked for, I had tirelessly, being that I was able to pursue and engage and get into an online business of my own, I had tirelessly made recommendations to said company to finally take being digital a little bit more seriously. Those ideas, obviously, I'm just a small fish in a big pond. Those ideas were always in one ear and out the other. And I think what was alarming and also amazing at the same time is watching someone else's investment in empires suffer because they failed to adapt. And they failed to adapt to the ever-changing world. And as a result, you know, said company had to make big adjustments, had to file for bankruptcy and restructure. And what that taught me as far as how I now approach business is, you know, you have to be able to keep up and evolve and adapt to the new things that, you know, become prevalent in our society. I think even this is going to be very controversial in some people's minds, but I think even embracing artificial intelligence, right? You know, there's been this craze all year about AI and how it could replace jobs and, you know, take things and maybe even be, sentient on its own. I think that embracing these technologies and embracing the world that's ever changing is the most important thing that we can do to adapt and to stay in business and to stay relevant, because to your point, these lockdowns are not done. I mean, if you're a world leader who wanted to see how successful, quote unquote, it was to actually keep people indoors and to keep people from living their lives, you know, you succeeded. You did a pretty damn good job if you're a leader who's in that position. So I think to your point, we have to kind of be ready to be in that type of a world where there are going to be powers that be that tell us when we can and when we can't live our lives. And I think that the best thing that we can do is take all of the technology and the new things that come out and really adapt and find out how to ingratiate that into our business. Because if you don't, you will be left behind, unfortunately. So, you know, that's really what the pandemic taught me is you have to really take all of the things that are going on in the world and you have to be able to adapt. You know, you can't just stick to the status quo. And you mentioned this earlier, and I say this all the time to any teams that I do manage. If you're not growing, you're dying. You know, like if you get comfortable where you're at just because your business had a few good months, you probably are quicker to go out of business as a result of that. So I think the constant adaptation, the constant growth has to be a thing, and I think the pandemic really taught us that.
Agreed. Yeah, it really, what always resonates for me, and it's done this since I was a child, you've heard the jack of all trades is a master of none, and then it stops there, right? I find that to be incredibly insulting because the jack of all trades is the reason why we are such a successful species. The jack of all trades is a master of adaptation. If you can manage to adapt, you have a creative mindset that will always look for solutions through creativity. But if you don't have that mindset, find somebody like Damon. Find somebody like me. Find somebody who is an adapter. You may not always give them the credit they value, or that they are valued by, or that they really do deserve, because the environment you're in may require that you're a specialist in that area, and the adapter is good at that area, but they're not a specialist. But when things change, they quickly come up with a way of dealing with the change versus the expert. The expert becomes completely unable to function, or their functionality is drastically reduced depending on how severe the change is to what their expertise is. So being highly adaptive is a very good skill set in entrepreneurship. So when you deal with things like this, we came up with different directions, right? But we both looked at the value of online. So we have things that influence our change. Things that we look at and say, this is not going to stick around, or this sticking around could be detrimental. That's happened throughout our species' timeline of success. Everything from the moment we started harvesting grain and things like that to survive the winters easier and not have to potentially lose a family member because of starvation, we now have this other ability, which is we can foresee the future to a degree. Now, how do we overcome this? So we look at AI and AI's influence with us. Well, what happened whenever the technology boom happened, right? We moved away from the tangible skill age, right? The timeline where we're manufacturing a significant amount of things, and we get into that the silicon age, where things are made up of in the ether. They're non-tangible, but they're systems that we can work through. Amazon is a system that we work through. YouTube is a system that we work through. Facebook is a system that we work through. There's nothing tangible about those places. Amazon delivers a product to you, but it's not tangible to you until the product arrives, but you order through them. We've adapted, and we've evolved with that. AI comes onto the scene. You can either be afraid of AI and stay away from it, or you can be adaptive and look at AI and how it can work with you. But the last thing you want to do is not know how something works, especially if there's a fear that it can take something over. Learn how it works, and then either the fear dissipates or you safeguard yourself towards that fear. One or the other. So, what does AI do? I've been using AI myself. I'm still learning how the systems work, but I'm incredibly impressed. Could it become sentient? It's always a fear that we've had. I grew up in the age of the Terminator movies. You know, everybody's like, hey, it's iRobot. I'm like, dude, I grew up with T-1000 and the T-800. You know, I grew up with every T version you could come up with until the trans thing, but whatever. So then I came up with all that stuff, and I'm like, look, I can deal with these things because I understand. Skynet comes online, man, we're going to lose our life, and things are going to be like these weird robots that can't aim for shit because they have a success rate of hitting the target lower than what you would expect a automated system to have. Right? So anyway, if you have a fear about AI like becoming sentient and killing us all off, here's the thing. Don't use Terminator as your reference point. Here's why. If you have that level of intelligence creating itself into existence, so it's manufacturing itself and has an operating system that it can work by, I promise you that the targeting system would work 100% of the time. It would have 100% accuracy. It would predict everything necessary in order to make a successful shot. That's the simplicity of it. Terminator wouldn't have happened. We would have been completely wiped out. Done. So there wouldn't have been the resistance, all of that. That's the romanticized concept in any way. So we can either go down the dystopic future or we can say, you know what, let's learn from this thing. Let's adapt to what this thing is and see how we can make it work. The same as the coal miners, whenever they were told that Silicon Valley is going to take their jobs, and then what did Silicon Valley's followers and supporters say? Learn to code. Okay, great. How about we all learn to code? How about we all learn to move forward, whatever direction forward is, but start looking at that. Become supportive of change. Don't hold on to what you saw yesterday, but hold enough of yesterday to make today work, but think to the future. So you've done it, I did it, we went through it with the big box gym that we were with. They taught us valuable lessons. Here's the thing that I like to tell people. Would I exchange my life experience for a master's degree in business from Harvard? Absolutely not. No way in hell would I exchange my life experiences for that education. Am I saying that my education's better? No. I'm saying that I do have different insights than those people will ever have. I have a different concept of support and structure than those people have. Now, to the degree that I understand, and that we haven't really sat down and gone through it, but I can tell you from the conversations that I have had from people that have graduated through that particular program, we think differently. But we don't think so differently that we're in different worlds necessarily, but we're on the other side of the planet together. So then it's who we can support in that process. There is no one right way to do this life. There's the way that we do it, and there's the way that we can influence other people to find success in a similar way. So we learned, we adapted. Don't be afraid of AI. You're a very adaptive person. It's the same as my council. Everybody on my council is incredibly adaptive. All of them. You, Johnny, Paul, my dad, hell, everybody that sits on that council is all there. There's a few other people I didn't mention, but that's, So they're all highly adaptive, and I value that trait significantly because it is one of the best surviving traits that we can have. All right. Anything on that before we move to the next question, big guy?
No. I think you outlined that well. I like that you mentioned the jack of all trades, master of none. That's crucial. And like you said, it's more of the fact that those people can adapt to the circumstances, because the specialists, they do tend to shrivel up when it's out of their scope. So I think, you have to have the jack of all trades in every situation, every business, every team has to have that player. So I think that's important.
Absolutely. It's to change that because I don't know if people realize that, but when you say jack of all trades, master of none, how do you feel about that statement? I've always felt like it was positioned negatively.
Yeah.
Because the reality is they're masters of adaptation, but that's the part that no one's ever said. They don't say it. I'll say no one's ever said. It's not stated in that context. But the reality is that is the reality. They're the masters of adaptation. So you're there. I mean, that's one of the reasons why you're there is because like where you are is because you're always adapting to the environment. You're not antiquated. You refuse to be antiquated. You refuse. For the people that aren't familiar with that term in the context that I'm using it in, that just means outdated. That you're not outdated. You will never be outdated because of your mindset. Again, that's why you're on that council with me. And why you're on my council with Johnny and Paul and the other people that are there. So, all right, moving on, baby. All right. Now, if you could talk to your younger self, Damon, what words of wisdom would you offer, and what event would you intervene on if there was only one moment you could change? This is to your younger self, not advice for others, but just you and your younger self. How would you intervene on that, and what advice would you give that person?
I guess the advice I'd give to my younger self is to be bold and to fear less. I think oftentimes fear is such a driver of complacency, and I would even say that, for my own lofty personal goals of where I want to be in life, I think fear is probably the number one thing that has kept me back from achieving those things. Especially, I think it's so profound how we can always tie things back to working in like a corporate setting, just because there's always this goal of dream selling, and again, like the idea of making you as comfortable as possible. Here's a salary, making you comfortable. Here are the things we want you to do for said salary. This is your job and your position and your roles. And I think we see that and we box ourselves in to the box they give us. And I think that fear is probably the biggest thing I'd tell my younger self is, hey, take the leap, right? Believe in yourself. When you have something that you believe in wholeheartedly and you know it within your being to be true and you want the best things for yourself, you have to be willing to fear less and jump in. And every instance so far that I can look back on right now, every instance in which I jumped in to whatever that idea of fear might have been, every time I try to just bypass that and just jump right in, it's always ended up working out the way it should. So I think that's probably the biggest word of advice I'd give my younger self is just to fear less, take the leap, and as long as you believe in yourself and you have a great support system, having you, having Johnny, having all the other people who are just, right now my mind's just churning with all the different people that have made an influence and impact on my life. But just surrounding yourself around like-minded individuals in the sense that people that have also been willing to take that leap and to fear less, I think that's huge. So that's probably the biggest takeaway for me from, if I could tell myself something at a younger age, that it would definitely be that. And then the second part to your question was if I could intervene.
Mm-hmm. Is there an event you would intervene on and stop something from happening if you could give yourself advice to offset that?
Yeah, there is. There was a period of time where, and man, this again, like, I think this just kind of goes to show you how much of a commitment we were willing to make to the cause for another business, right? Like, I think we, as visionaries, we saw great things, and we saw great things in the people that we had the pleasure of working with. And I think those relationships are really probably the biggest drivers that kept us in those environments. But the biggest thing that I would be able to intervene on with myself probably would have been the turning point in which said company had restructured. And basically, I felt that I was left with two options, red pill, blue pill. You know, blue pill was stay comfortable, you know, do what I thought at the time would be best for myself and my wife and everything. Or red pill, take the leap, start building your own thing. Basically, I would have intervened in that moment because all I did by taking the blue pill was I just further delayed the extra year of potential progress and impact that I could have made. Now, do I regret that? No, right? I don't regret any decision I've ever made ever, because that's what's helped me build to where I am today, and I'm damn proud of where I am today. But if I could go back and intervene, it probably would have been at that moment, you know, where I definitely was in a good position where I could have made this leap and this decision and grown this business a year earlier. But life is currency and experience is currency, and I think that it was a valuable lesson in seeing that, you know. But yeah, definitely on a level of intervention, it definitely would have been the moment I intervened. You know, you and I were having very tough conversations with so many people in that moment, because a lot of people's worlds were flipped upside down. A lot of people were hoping that they would get that blue pill and were led to believe that they would get that blue pill, but then found out on a whim that they would no longer have a position and a salary to, you know, meet their needs. So that definitely would have been the moment that I would have intervened for sure.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing that, by the way. You know, it's one of those questions that's it's paradoxical, because if you intervene, you change who you are today.
Yeah.
And for who we are today, we foresee that intervention making us, pushing us closer to the goal that we have, that we recognize now. The problem is that if you quantify, one, the lessons that you got from the timeline you would want to intervene on, you don't know what that tinkering would do. It's the time travel paradox issue, right? We don't know what kind of trajectory that would send us on. Just the sheer fact that you could intervene on yourself could cause problems, because then you have in your back pocket, I will show up from the future again some point in time in my life, and everything I do right now, you might get into over-criticizing and being over-critical. There's a lot of different interesting ways that we could go with that. But the reality is this: you learned what you learned, and like you said, you don't regret any of it, because you have that mindset. It doesn't matter if you intervene or not. You have the mindset that you will always overcome, and you value the lessons and the things you will go through. But if we could get back and make those changes, if anything, I just hear that you would just reassure yourself. You're the right guy. You're where you should be. You're everything that you should be. And just be with you, right? That's more of like what I'm understanding from what we're saying and what we're talking about here, is that that's you as a human being. And you're never in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's how you navigate the circumstances of what you're going through that makes the difference. And because you're highly adaptive, it gives you that privilege to be able to see through the murkiness of uncertainty, what we were facing back then. So it's that adaptability, you know. So again, to reiterate for the people that watch this, if you feel that the jack of all trades is a master of none, I invite you to reevaluate that, because we're the example of what the master of adaptation is. We're the example of the end conclusion of being a jack of all trades. Our specialty category is adaptation, but it's a diminished value because people are comfortable and they don't need to see the need to adapt to survive. All right, excellent. The only thing that also, if I could offer anything in that, and just for the overall witness of the video, is that fear itself, and how we would like to say, you know, avoid fear to, you know, just whatever with fear, is if we look at qualifying what fear is coming from, we become powerful versus the avoidance of fear or the denial that there's a reason for fear. So, and again, this isn't a critique upon you, it's just the overall experience that we have whenever fear becomes part of our reality. So few can get past the emotional grip of fear because it's so incredibly powerful. Once we get too far in the percentage of emotion over cognitive reality or processing, the more rational we become, the more gripped we get, and the less efficient and effective we are. We become more, we do and think things that are things we're later going to wish that we didn't or want to get apologies for or to give apologies for. But if we go after the cause of fear and why is it there in the first place, fear is coming from you have an attachment to some sort of outcome, that there's a real threat to that outcome, and therefore we are afraid of that thing. But as long as it's in that non-descriptive, non-titled category, or the sole title of fear versus the real thing, right? Change, and then the potential relationship challenge that it creates, or I might lose money because of this, or my business could close. That's where the work starts to show up. If your business might close, why? What's the real threat in the economy to your business? Now let's look at that, because now we have something powerful we can work on. But fear is the first indicator. It's a different type of person that can get past the initial experience of fear and go after the mechanics of fear. The mechanics of fear is going to be you have an attachment to something, the outcome, and what's threatening that outcome. That's where typically fear is coming from. So you are that person, by the way. It's not a critique on you. I know you to do that. You are going to dissect the experience to figure out why. But to put it into words for people watching, that's one of the key elements about us. But that's also a factor, again, back to it, not beat the horse here. But I'll probably get a YouTube strike just for saying that. But not to beat the horse. There you go, there, YouTube. In case you missed that one on your automated systems there. It's the master of the jack of all trades is the master of adaptation. Fear is something that we don't avoid. We look at it, we say, hey, I'm uncomfortable with this, but let's look at why. And eventually we figure it out. It may not be immediate, but it's the mechanics of our thinking that looks for the mechanics of causing the fear. All right. Nothing's wrong with it. We all have our timelines when we would love to go back, but again, it's a hypothetical question. Nobody's going back to change anything about the past. But the point is there are timelines whenever we would do something different based off what we know now. And the goal is to take what we know now in the present and say, when this type of scenario shows up in the future, we're more equipped to deal with that issue. It's not so we can change the past. It's so that we can offset the future to be more directed towards our goals. So the thing that I always suggest for people, though, is look at the lesson that you might lose if you change some behavior based off of the past. If you avoid it, the thing that you're going to lose is the ability to overcome it. Because overcoming is not avoiding. Avoiding is avoiding. I'm staying away from it. The interesting thing about it is, eventually it'll come back around, it's going to happen again. So, again, you're not the one that's susceptible to that by any means. That's for the witness, just so the people that I don't know that we're speaking with. All right. Here's going to be a great one. I'm going to preface it, though, but you understand me to the experience of since we work together, you understand I'm very system-oriented. That's actually, it's an interesting latent skill of mine. And when I say latent, it's latent in the economy. It's latent in the world of me charging for this skill. But the skill is about systems. I like a term, but this term can't be used, but I'm going to use it for the moment and pull it away and come up with a different definition. So work with me on this if you don't mind, Damon.
Yes.
What I see systems be is it is behavioral engineering. Because I've recently, in the last 5 years, have realized I have the engineer's structural thinking process with psychology. So you add those two things together, and that's the way that I think predominantly. So I've got a lot of empathy and a lot of other variables that support those two things, but those are two very strong categories of the way that I view the world and how I process information. So I think in alignment for engineering because I want to come up with a creative solution that works for others, which is the concept of engineering. And then the psychology is bringing in the human element, the way we think, the way we behave, and bring that into that process that comes up with these systems that are effective. Now, with the systems I'm referring to, and just work with it on your side the way that you do, to give an example, systems are almost always intangible, but they are the way that we do things procedurally that have a specific elicited outcome. As another example, for the systems that I've created, my previous contract, I went up 64% of the gross income in the course of a year, and I took the business from a $40,000 a year company and made it 1.22. So $1,220,000 area. So what does that mean? My systems created something that hit the $1 million club from from a $500,000 club, which is a pretty big jump in a very particular time on a partial contract. So meaning I didn't have a total club contract. The reason why I'm saying that is because that's the systems that I put in place to make a difference. You yourself, you're a system-oriented guy too. You know, again, part of the reason why we're in council together. What systems have you created that your employees, which you're your employee, but yet your system could also affect your customers, because that's typically the outcome is this customer experience. What is it that you've created that has made you develop something that you could potentially even franchise at some point? I see that they're there. I just want to hear from your words what kind of systems you have that make that a reality.
Yeah, sure. As far as the systems go, I believe the biggest, being that it's mostly going to be digital in the grand scheme of things, the foundation of what we're building is really digital to begin with. So the big systems are the education systems that we have in place. There's a library of content available to people who sign up for Hypertrophy Lab that they can access to better serve their own lives. So we have the online content portion as one system. The other system that we have is, of course, the app for exercise tracking and logging and recording programs, so that way people know what exercises, when, how, all of that. Some other systems we have in place too. We have our billing systems, obviously, that allow us to be able to collect said revenue to be able to fulfill and offer such services. And then, of course, we have our marketing systems, our referral systems as well. So a lot of that really is, the social aspect without really any deep ad spend. We have the referral-based things where clients are reporting their testimonials, and we're able to use that to also inspire and gather and garner interest. So that's another system. And then I'd say the system overall that I'm probably most excited about is back to the online education portion, just the continued education that we're going to be able to provide, hopefully at a larger scale here in the next few months. Really, again, these systems all exist in the online world, but these are the systems that I'm using to successfully generate revenue, turn a profit, and make this business grow.
Oh, I love it. And I expected to hear a lot of systems. And again, it's just for the people that are watching to also understand what we mean by systems it's not the tangible concept, but it has a tangible outcome. And a system is a procedure of actions necessary to elicit an outcome. Payment structures, it is eliciting an outcome, right? You have, this is my product, this is the cost, this is the transaction point, and this is the outcome. So you can progress into that. With that, do you have anything that you'd like to share as far as, like, especially, again, there's going to be people watching this that are getting started, or there are people that are already started, but they're on a hang-up that's not a hang-up for you, or you overcame it, or it was never a problem. What do you use for your payment system? If you don't mind sharing. If you don't want to share it, by all means, just say, hey, that's just proprietary, I'm not going to share it. Because that's a right that we all have in this channel. There is the category of proprietary.
Yeah, no, not a problem. I don't mind sharing that. So the system we're using for payments is Stripe.
Okay.
The main reason for that is because our website is built off of Squarespace. which Stripe is, integrated in that system. So it makes the payment process very, very seamless. I have had people that have wanted to pay, using either cash or Zelle or Venmo or something like that, which I've only made very few exceptions for, but any ongoing new business that we generate will be housed within that system through Stripe. So it's easier to take account for. It's easy to sync up with all of my tax software and everything that I need to run the business. So Stripe is the main payment processing system that we're using.
Oh, okay, fantastic. And then, by the way, thank you for sharing that. Some people don't want to. I find that challenging because it's kind of, you're not going to expose yourself by sharing it. Other people use different things, and it's just all this is to try to help other people that are trying to come up, and help them organize enough that they don't have too many offsets, not too many upsets that take them out of the potential opportunity. There's way too many people on this planet that we can service. We won't be able to service all of them. Even if we're all 100% automated, your customer requirements that once you get to a certain threshold is going to overcome your production, even if it's automated. Your production can keep going, but your real stress is going to be because of the customer service stuff. So you're going to get only X amount of customer service issues off of a specific amount of clientele, but eventually it gets to the point that it becomes very heavy. Okay, and you use a website again because your goal is to become, if not exclusive, almost exclusive to online. You're using you said Squarespace is the website builder.
Yeah, I use Squarespace for the website this time around. I've previously used WordPress, which I don't mind, but I found better success hiring an engineer, web engineer, to be able to kind of work those protocols because there is a little bit of coding involved. Shopify is decent. My wife runs her business with Shopify, but being that it's I usually, right now I'm housing everything through my own personal website, so I needed a place that I could offer a variety of, different services and features, and I've just found Squarespace to be the most versatile in that sense. So yeah, Squarespace is the main thing that I use to build my website right now.
Okay. My man. Yeah, so that's a fantastic place to start because it gives people some place to look. Right? There's plenty of different options when it comes to this. A lot of times just to figure out what the hell it is that we want. Like, what do we want as far as our outcome? So with that, if anything, it's just a resource sharing. We really want to help people and get them to understand that. So if that's going to be where you house it, like you said, you use an engineer, so you use somebody to help design the website. I suggest, if you don't know enough about it, one, you want to practice. You do want to do something. Now, am I saying learn every single thing about every little piece of your business? There's only a very small percentage of people in the world that actually could do that successfully and not have it overcome them or overwhelm them or reduce their productivity. There's going to be times when you can afford it, you need to hire somebody, just let them do it. Like mow my lawn, I do it for therapeutic reasons, but there's also times whenever I just can't fit it in the day, it's better that I pay somebody else than it is to do it myself. Because I have more opportunity if I go outside of my current job. If I go outside, go outside of the lawn, mowing the lawn, I can make more money, and then therefore somebody else in the economy gets a paycheck because they worked my lawn while I go off and do something. And there's other times that it's just better that I mow it. It just depends on the outcome, the reward, and all of that. So cost benefits. No, thank you for sharing that, by the way, Damon. All right, last question. Well, actually, it's the second to last question. I keep doing that. What advice would you give an entrepreneur starting out in your industry? This is not for previous you. This is somebody who says, I love what you do. I have no idea where to start. What would you say to them to help them start into this with a little more confidence, enough confidence that might actually make the difference of them getting where they need to be?
What advice would I give someone starting out in this? There's a few things that come to mind. I think the gist of advice that I would give someone starting out would be to delay gratification. delay gratification, and I think that, and also this is good. Let me give some context to the profit conversation we had earlier, because I did mention that I instantly saw profit. I would say delay gratification, and when you're making money in the very beginning, I think the most important thing, even before you're making money, you have to be willing to reinvest into your business. I'm fortunate that I have about 4 streams of income that I've set up for myself. The thing is, fitness is the thing that I have the most time experience in. So this is why I decided to go ahead and create this. Now, I think for anyone starting out, you know, you obviously, in my opinion, if you have another role or position and this is something that you know that you want to do, I think starting out part-time is a great way to go. But I think reinvesting your money into your business is key. Now, while I did turn a profit from the immediate, once I hit that on switch, it was profitable. However, the amount of time and experience I've had in the business has helped me do that, 1. And then 2, the profit that I have is automatically going right back into the business. It's not, so when I say I'm profitable right away, I'm not spending that money and going on a vacation next week. Right, I don't have a giant vacation planned to Hawaii in the next year at all. You know, all the profit that I'm generating from that business will immediately go back into growing this business. So I would say the biggest piece of advice I would give someone is to be comfortable not really making a paycheck in the beginning, because you know that that paycheck is actually going to reinvest into your business to help you get to a point of scale where you can then become comfortable enough to grow it to a size where you can take a salary or a paycheck out of it on a consistent basis. And that's because you've done all the grunt work, quote unquote grunt work, in the beginning to reinvest back into the business. So I think because I'm reinvesting into the business, you know, if I had to say, you know, when am I taking a check in which I will go to the grocery store and buy groceries, or in which I will go and buy something that I want as a toy or whatever, I think that I'm not going to be actually taking a profit to spend until probably 1 to 2 years in on the business, because I fully intend to take all the money I have that I'm making from this business and just reinvest it back. So that's probably the biggest piece of advice I would give is, you know, set yourself a disciplined regiment in which you know that the money that you're bringing in, the revenue you're bringing in, you're going to reinvest back into the business. Because if you want to do this for the long term, you have to think long term. You have to have plans and systems and things in place that allow you to do this long term. So that's probably the biggest piece of advice I'd give someone starting out, is to be disciplined in your expectations. And to think of it as a long-term investment. I mean, if you're going to grow any business, I would expect and I would hope that most people would see that as a long-term play. But you have to be willing to delay that instant gratification. Does it feel nice to say that I turned a profit immediately? Absolutely it does. But I'd rather 5 to 10 years from now, when you and I hop on and do another episode and your podcast is only growing as we continue to, you know, keep our relationship intact, I want 5 years from now to be able to hop on here and be like, hey, Chad, I finally got my first check that I'm actually going to go spend, and I'm going to get ice cream with my kid right after this, right? But I want to be able to say that after I've reinvested every penny back into the business, because at the end of the day, you know, the grass is green where you water it. And, you know, if you're watering that grass in your own business, and you're reinvesting in your own business, you know, you're setting yourself up for that long-term success. So it's just compounding, you know, so I think that's the biggest thing. Delay instant gratification, compound into your business, and, you know, set realistic expectations with yourself, because if you want to do this as your sole way of making money, you most definitely need to think of this as a long-term business, not a short, get-rich-quick type of thing.
Absolutely. I teach people to avoid the get-rich schemes like the plague. Avoid it. So what I would say, as far as to expound on that a bit, because that's all incredible information, right? It's like you should delay on instant gratification. And you will get it later. But nothing's better than getting it later and not have to worry about it damaging your business because you needed to pay yourself. So if you're starting off and you're in the survival phase right now where you need the money to come in order for you to exist, look at getting a job working for somebody else that requires the skill sets that you're not the strongest in, but will help your business. This does not mean you're going to go and work for somebody that has a business that yours competes with, as most companies are going to have a non-compete in that environment. But get a job where if there is a non-compete, it doesn't affect your business because it is not related. So get a job where you can earn your living money and then take your free time that's not allocated to the agreement to work for somebody else and take that time to grind on your business and to work through your problems and your challenges with your business to nurture it to grow, and then use money that you're living on to help grow that company. So that actually is more of what I'm referring to when I say incubator. That's more of what I'm referring to. So as far as this goes, please know that wherever you are is perfect, but we need to figure out where you are, where you need to figure out where you are in order to grow. Damon and I are not in this place because we came out of the womb and we're gifted to be here. We have adapted and evolved ourselves into being these people to make these differences. And we're sharing our stories. Some of the things that we share are going to resonate, some things won't. But the goal is to try to help inspire you. You're not alone. And other videos that are on this series will hopefully speak to you over time to help you do this. Damon is such a great person to avatar. He is a great person to put out there. Just because he's not Grant Cardone or one of these other top producers does not mean that he's not somebody to follow behind. His wins will be your wins if you see him as your avatar. And Damon will win. I promise you, if it's a horse betting thing and Damon's out there in the run, I'm putting money on it. I'm putting money on all my people. I'm putting resources on them. So I encourage you to do the same. Their wins are my wins. I feel good when I hear about them winning. I also ask questions. What is it you did that was different? Because I'm looking for what it can make the difference in my own company and what I can do to share with others to help them become successful. Damon, we're out of time. Last question, then I'll let you go, and I apologize if we have to make this very, very short. But the question is, from today's conversation, or from this particular video's conversation, what is your takeaways? Anything specific or that you've got that you said, hey, this is incredibly valuable and I'm taking this with me, or I've got something food for thought?
Yeah, and by the way, none of this is rehearsed, so Chad's been putting me on the spot a lot with these questions.
This is a question that's not on the questionnaire.
Yeah. Although he sent me a little questionnaire to get an idea of these things that we to kind of know the direction that the conversation may go. This question's a good question. I think the biggest insight and takeaway and ideas that have come from this for me would probably be just understanding that there's so many levels to where everyone is at, and I think this idea, I used to believe that comparison was a thief of joy, and I've changed that recently. I don't really believe that, because I think there's a level of comparing to aspire and to grow and to want to reach levels that other people have been at, so you can learn from those experiences. And that's probably been the biggest takeaway. Every time I talk to you, it's a big takeaway is just the level of experience and expertise that we can bring into a conversation together. I think I'm always constantly learning, and this is why I enjoy sitting on here, no matter how long it's been. It might have been 2+ hours that we've had a conversation today. But no, it's been great. And I will say the biggest takeaway is just being able to learn and be a sponge. And I hope that anyone watching this is also able to learn that same thing. I think this is also why, people like yourself, Chad, are in the consulting business, because people seek the time and attention, the currency in which you can provide them, the value that you can provide them to kind of learn and grow. This is why the gyms you're consulting have been successful and are continuing to be successful. So, yeah, the biggest takeaway is really just continue to learn and be a sponge and take everything you can from everyone you can. These conversations, they take time and they take energy, but I think that, this has literally been like an online course, even just for me, just the opportunity to sit down and learn and hear from your perspective, even though I'm technically the guest on your show. It's been a great experience. So, yeah, I would just say to anyone out there listening too, hopefully they've had the opportunity to also learn and absorb and get information, and hopefully find a way to utilize that. And of course, shameless plug, again, this isn't rehearsed. I would definitely recommend if you're someone that's in the fitness space, you're getting started, maybe you've been in it for a while, definitely hop on and talk to Chad, share your experiences, share your journey, share everything that you've been through. And if you're even just starting out and growing your business, definitely consult Chad with that, because there's a lot of insight just from simple conversation that we can all gain. So that's probably been the biggest takeaway, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for that, Damon. By the way, I didn't pay him for that. That was a joke earlier.
No, but I actually might send you an invoice after this. Now that I think about it, I said some nice.
You just sent me the invoice. Oh, I love it. Yeah, if you are starting out into this space and you're like, okay, I'm going to go the route of a personal trainer, I do have a channel and a business page on Facebook that is the personal trainer consultant. I'm just helping people become better personal trainers just simply by helping them understand how the systems work and how the industry works, and then giving them insights on how to work with that. I love entrepreneurs. It's my space. They are the people that I want to support. I am an entrepreneur myself, and we are a bunch of stray cats. The best way to unify them is to come up with a can of tuna, throw it in the middle, and we all come to the same place. So then it's a matter of organizing it so it's not absolute chaos. That's my goal. So with that, people like Damon, follow him, find him. Where can we find you, Damon? Facebook, online. How can we find you? If, let's say, I'm in the area and I'm actually interested in meeting you, maybe I want to work for you, or just, I want your products, I want your service, I want something about you. How can we find you?
Yeah, my website's damonbishop.com. Real easy. That's my space online. I do post a lot of memes on my Instagram page. You can follow me at Real Damon Bishop. And you can also find me on Facebook as well. I'm sure a lot of people will find us on Facebook from this video. But yeah, you can find me on all socials. Anyone, just go ahead and hit me with a message and let me know any way I can help.
Yeah, find him over on my business page too. I know that he's liked it and he'll share some stuff and all of that, so you'll be able to find him from there as well. So you guys, we appreciate your time. This has been another episode of Top Tier Career, the American Dream. It's the focus on entrepreneurism. This is one more amazing person in the fitness industry that is making a big difference. It doesn't matter if you're in the fitness industry or not, you'll always learn something from this. So with that being said, we really appreciate your time. Damon, do you have anything in closing? Because I know we're actually a little bit over time here for you. Anything on the way out?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'm on my way out now, but I'll just say, we'll definitely be doing more of these. Hopefully I'll have an opportunity to hop on and talk to you again. And again, any feedback, anything you guys have, just definitely leave it down in the comments and let us know what you're thinking. And yeah, look forward to connecting with you again soon, Chad. Wonderful. All right. Thank you very much, Damon. Again, this is, the Top Tier Career, the American Dream. I am Chad Everett Rocheers. I'm the host, and today my guest has been Damon Bishop. So, guys, enjoy, like, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification so you know when we go live, and be ready whenever there's times to ask for your email and contact information so that we can send you over some things that actually help out from the channel, as far as some basic structures, formats, maybe some documentation or something to help you move your business along or create some concrete value. So until next time, please stay safe, and let's go create something great for this country. Thank you. See ya.